Hello and welcome to the show. This is Everything Under the Sun. My name is Ty. Hope all you're doing amazing out there and doing what you can to take care of yourselves and show yourself love. I've been having a lot of conversations recently, and a lot of them have been surrounding this idea of imagination. And it's really interesting as you kind of dive into this idea of imagination. It's truly amazing how our imagination is the root of how so many things are created in this world. Not only just these material things, as I've spoken about before, like people's inventions, like these things that we see in the world, like someone had to think of it. Someone had to imagine what it's like to move really fast on an open road or fly in the sky or build this amazing structure. It had to be something that was imagined first, and then it was created. But not only is imagination something that creates these inventions and these amazing things that people have created over time, but it also allows us to move ourselves into a place that we want to be in, a better place that we want to be in, is something that feels more in tune with who we are. And we desire that so much. Yet oftentimes what we imagine is just a perpetuation of what already is. This experience that we dislike, this train of thought, this mindset, this person, this situation, whatever it is, we keep on perpetuating that same idea, that same image in our mind, and we haven't given ourselves this beautiful gift of imagination. We haven't allowed ourselves to imagine what it would be like to experience something different. Many of these self-help books that people have, or these things that people really say are helping them to really do different things or kind of have more energy or be more motivated, be more in tune with themselves. A lot of those things are asking you to do certain things within your environment. Maybe wake up a little earlier, maybe eat certain types of things in certain types of times of day. Maybe it's telling you to create a vision board and visualize. Maybe it's asking you to meditate, kind of just to do these different things that are shaking up your daily habit. And that's because, as we start to see certain things in our environment, the images in our minds are going to start to shift as well. Something that I've said multiple times within the past like week or so, and I'm not sure it's all come up very organically, but you can't open new doors with old keys. And the old keys are the old images, and the new doors are the things that you want for yourself in your life. The new experiences, new opportunities, the abundance of wealth and relationship and joy and love. These are the new doors that we want to open up, but we're trying to use old keys. We're only imagining the things that already are, and they keep us in that place where we're getting frustrated because we want that door to open so bad, but it's not working with the key that we have. So these books that are very self-help oriented, they're getting people to shake up what's actually happening in their day-to-day lives. And that image within our minds are changing. I mean, there's so many books that I've read and kind of acted on, and I realized I'm like, wait a minute, waking up 6 o'clock is not really my vibe, but I have different thoughts now. I thought I couldn't do this, and now I realize I can do this. I choose not to, because I like to sleep, but I know that this is something that I have a choice in. Something previously I thought, oh no, I couldn't do something like that. I couldn't have energy like that. I did it so often, and I'm pretty sure I spoke in an episode about how I was waking up earlier and, kind of doing all these things, and that's really amazing. But the point of it, as far as what I took out of it, was that I realized that I had radically different thoughts going on. I had radically different realizations about myself that were happening. And as we kind of put ourselves in different situations, we can realize that the change in our mindset is ultimately changing the things around us and how we move in the world. And our imagination is something so powerful that we can move ourselves emotionally to that place that we want to be, as I'm kind of bringing that back to what I said in the beginning. Each day in our lives, we experience something, and sometimes it's a negative emotion, sometimes it's a negative thought pattern that maybe keeps coming up. Maybe it's someone in our lives that we don't feel is really treating us right, or isn't really, we're not really connecting in the way that we want to. When we experience those things, they don't feel good to us. They don't feel like things that we want to experience. And in those moments, we are able to use our imagination to not perpetuate that thought process anymore, to not perpetuate that emotion anymore, but to indulge ourselves. And really, it is indulging yourself because it's giving yourself the ability to think of something that feels good. And sometimes that is really the best thing that we can do for ourselves, because we are bogging ourselves down with these thoughts that aren't very pleasing. They're not very comforting. They're not things that feel good for us, yet we continue to think them. And sometimes it can be very difficult. And I don't mean to sound dismissive at all about the experiences that we all deal with, the things that we're feeling within ourselves, and those emotions, we have to validate them. We have to acknowledge that that they are present, that they are there. But we can allow ourselves those opportunities to indulge ourselves in a thought process and imagining in a daydream that is in alignment with what we truly want. Something I would say with certain clients, and just kind of speaking about this way in which we can start to engage our mind to think of things that are more pleasing for us, is to imagine waking up one day in your bed or wherever you'd like to wake up, and everything is exactly as you want it to be. The maybe sun or the light is beaming in a certain way. Maybe you have blackout curtains because you don't want the light to beam in a certain way, but maybe, like, you get breakfast in bed, or maybe, you get a raise at work, or you get called out of work, or maybe you find this job that's been really amazing, or this partner that is maybe not in your life just yet brings you coffee while in bed, and it's something that can be really amazing. You can imagine these things and it can feel really good. And imagine as fantastic as you like to imagine, but don't hold tight to that imagination as far as the expectation of it appearing in your life. These things that we visualize, they're very possible in our lives, and they're letting you know, like, as you create these things in your imagination, know that those are your deepest desires. Those are the things that you truly want to manifest in your life. And feel how good that feels for them to be in your life, because that's how we get closer to realizing those things. Many of the things that we wish to have in our lives, wish to feel in our lives, they're the very opposite of what we are feeling and have in our lives right now in this moment. And it can be hard to say, well, how am I going to get all that money? How am I going to get to have all that extra time? How am I going to get to have that perfect partner? How am I going to, it's like I don't have it now. How am I going to do that? And as long as we keep feeling the feeling of lack and limitation and not having, then it doesn't feel like having, right? And it seems like, it seems like it's a really strange concept, but really it's like, how can we feel, or even begin to feel, or even begin to welcome something like that in our lives, if what we're feeling is the very opposite of it? And there's nothing wrong with, the thoughts and patterns that have been going on for so many years that it's very easy to fall back into them. There's nothing easy about turning away from a lot of these insecurities and doubts and things that we've been holding on to for so long. It's a process that we have to work and give ourselves love during. And I've said that many, many times, but in this time when we really want to do that work for ourselves, our imagination can be something so powerful. And as we hold true to that feeling, and say that, this is the feeling that I desire, then we can start to look at those images a little more with ambiguity, and start to have fun with these imaginings, because many times we imagine things that we want in our lives and we're like, oh, that'd be so nice. And then we kind of get out of our heads and outside of our imaginations and say, well, that's not what's in my life right now. I wish that can be, but that's just not what it is. And that thought in itself doesn't feel good. Like, feel how after you have that thought of that fantastic thing in your life, and then you have the thought, well, I wish that can be the case, like, that, you just feel like it just feels less good than the actual thoughts that you were having before. And notice that, like, as we notice our feelings fluctuating, we can be more attuned. It's tuning that dial a little more. It's tuning it to the place that we want to be, and we can imagine ourselves in that place. We can imagine what that tune sounds like, just like you can imagine what a song sounds like. There are many times that, you have a song stuck in your head, and for some reason, the voice inside your head knows all the words to the song, but, you try to say it out loud, and for some reason, like, you can't really remember all the words. There are things that we feel within us, things that we desire within us, things that we know within us that maybe isn't coming out fully. but it's still there, and we can indulge in it, and we can imagine it, and we can feel it for that moment. And as we feel it, and as we come into tune with that feeling more, we can allow ourselves to get to that place a lot more, to value that feeling more and more, until we get to the place where that feeling is all that matters. That feeling is the basis of where we are and where we want to be. And as other things pop up in our lives, we'll realize, this is another opportunity for me to give this love, give this attention, and imagine what a different circumstance would be. What would it feel like to not feel this judgment? What would that feel like? What would it feel like to walk into this room and not feel like I have to worry about certain things about my appearance, or worry about certain things with my body or my actions or my words or my presence? What would it feel like to not have to worry about that? Imagine it. And many people, even with stage fright, they say, imagine everyone in their underwear. Imagination is something that we use all the time, and it's used to help with things like anxiety and pain and sadness and things that we experience in these day-to-day moments. But it's when it's the harder things, it's when it's those small little moments in our lives that seem to keep popping up, that it seems a lot far removed to use your imagination for something like that. But again, just as the person with stage fright is imagining everyone in their underwear, and that helps them to maybe do that speech a little with a little less nerves, maybe allows them to be themselves a little more and kind of speak a little more eloquently, because they're able to have that comfort within themselves. There's so many qualities that will start to exude out of us that are always and already within you, but they have the opportunity to be free because we're letting that go. We're letting go of these judgments and these criticisms and these doubts that we have. We can live in comfort and in freedom because we're allowing ourselves to indulge in that feeling of joy and comfort and abundance and whatever else we want to feel. But using our imagination can be something so powerful, and just allowing us to know what that feels like. Because again, we could have never had that in our lives. We could have never felt as though we had that in our lives. So to imagine, or to believe that it's going to just pop up out of nowhere, can be very hard to believe. But as we grow into imagining it more, as we grow into like recognizing and being comfortable with that feeling of having it, then the realization of it seems more and more likely. There's just more and more optimism because we're getting a little bit more familiar with just that feeling of it. So the point of all of this is really just to say, as we go through our lives, as we kind of deal with those frustrations, as we deal with those thoughts that come up that seem to keep perpetuating, as we deal with those people in our lives that seem to irritate us, or these frustrations that don't feel good, as we come across these things that don't feel good for us, that they don't feel good inside, utilizing our imagination can be something that helps us to, even for a moment, move outside of that space, move outside of that feeling that we're having in that moment, and aligning ourselves with something that feels more good. And it feels more good because it's more in alignment with who we are. So align yourself with who you are by imagining what would the circumstance be if it weren't the case. And hold on to that feeling, not the image itself. The feeling is what matters, because as we imagine this fantastic thing, if we look in the world and we don't see it happening, or we expect it to happen, and there's this high expectation for it to appear in our lives, then that in itself can be something that causes more pain. That in itself can be something that causes the perpetuation of something more that we just don't want for ourselves. So yeah, that's all I really had for this episode. I really just find it to be just so amazing as I think about this idea of imagination, and just how many areas it can apply to. And this is, stuff that I'm doing too. And like, this is what I'm discovering as well within my own experience. And as I have these conversations with other people, and how imagination is in the basis of so many of them, it's something that seems to be quite universal. And as, again, we think about things around us and the things that have been created and the things that maybe you've experienced in your own life, it started with this image, this desire that was in this intangible space. It started with a daydream, and it's like, oh, that'd be amazing to start my own business. That'd be amazing to, buy my own house, or, have this car or have this relationship or whatever it is. It's like it started with this thought, this daydream, this thing that felt really good. And that in itself is something so amazing and something I've just been really, really fascinated with recently. So that's all I really have for this episode. If you have any thoughts or ideas or anything that you'd like to share, you can send those to everything.sunpodcast@gmail.com. You can join any of the social media groups: Instagram everything.sunpodcast, Twitter @everysunpodcast, and the Facebook group @everysunpodcast as well. And yeah, that's all I got. I love you all so much, and I'll talk to you soon.